y'all, and welcome to today's video. I'm very excited because we are going to be ranking palettes today. I have 8 palettes here in front of me that I have been testing, trying over the past week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Some of these I feel like I've had even longer than that, but I love doing eyeshadow palette videos here on my channel. I have a video up with all of these palettes. But after I kind of do looks, after I test them, after I try them, once I have my full, complete thoughts and I'm ready to review the palettes, I like to do it in a ranking style video like this. Y'all seem to really like it, so that's what we're going to do today. I have 8 palettes here and we are going to rank them all. Now, if you are new here, I want to say, hey, my name is Heather and makeup makes me happy. Here at my channel, we don't try to be perfect. We just want to have a good time with our makeup, whatever that means. Shimmer, glitter, ranking palettes, we are here for it. So if that sounds good to you, I do hope that you will subscribe before you leave today because I upload lots of new videos every single week. So if you are looking for new fun makeup content on your subscription feed, this right here is the place to be. But we do have a lot to talk about, so let's jump into it. Now, before we get started, I do want to give kind of like a little more information, maybe a little disclaimer. You know, of course, first of all, my palette that I collabed with ADEPT is my favorite palette of the month, of the week, of the day, of the year, of forever for me. Okay, this is the favorite. Of course, I love this. This one, well, this one's all beat up because I've been using it. This is Restocking Friday, but of course I'm not going to rank it because how can I make any other palette like compete against something that I created? My other disclaimer is that these are all, of course, my personal preference. What I like in palettes, of course, is going to rank higher up. So I'm going to be reviewing these as we go along, kind of telling you my thoughts behind the whole palette. If you see that, you know, a palette that you love, that I have, maybe is not ranked the #1 spot for me, but you love it, then I love it for you. That's wonderful. All I can do is rank and review things based on my personal preference. So that's what I'm going to do. I have 8 palettes here to rank. With all of that said, let's jump into it. Okay, I did not try a bad palette these past few weeks. I haven't had any palette that I'm like, oh my gosh, this palette is terrible. But at the #8 spot, I'm putting the Jaclyn Cosmetics Dear Mom palette. This is a good palette. I did a video with this. I did 3 looks. I thought all of the looks were really, really pretty, really beautiful. I liked them a lot, but this to me is not my personal preference. I love colorful shadows. You see I have a colorful look today, but I also really love neutral shadows. But when I go for neutrals, I like there to be a lot of different textures. I like the shadows to be beautifully pigmented. You're gonna see more neutral palettes coming up. And to me, this one is a good palette. Let me be clear. This is a very good palette. I really liked the looks I did, but I did find that these were a little more on the sheer side, which you can build them up. So if you're a beginner to makeup and you don't want something that's very pigmented out the gate, this could definitely be for you. And if you like this color story and you bought this palette, I don't think you're gonna be disappointed. It is very pretty, but for me, when I go in with neutrals, I prefer to get a lot of pigment and then blend it out and work from there. I just find that like the funnest way to work with shadows. I get my favorite looks that way. I do think this is pretty though. We do have some shades in here that to me are a bit repetitive. I do really like this silver shade. I think this is one of the best shades in this palette. It's definitely very beautiful, but when I compare it to like my Natasha Denona Mini Xenon palette, it doesn't compete with that silver. When I compare it to silvers I have in my Kaleidos formula, it just doesn't really compete with some of my favorite indie brands. And I do have to take into consideration that this palette is at a higher price point. It's almost $50. So that's why it's coming in a little lower in the ranking. I think this is really nice. It's just not a favorite for me. I may end up passing this palette along to somebody who I feel like will like these tones a little bit better, but overall, I think this is a really, really nice palette, just not my favorite. Okay, next up at number 7, this palette, I really like the formulas. This is a palette with great formulas, lots of pigmentation, but I'm ranking the Kylo Art Nouveau palette a little bit lower because it's a rainbow palette. It's a rainbow palette, which I think most brands should have a rainbow palette in their line. I think it's kind of a staple palette for color lovers to be able to try a brand. I like a brand that has a rainbow palette, but if I'm ranking things based on my personal preference, of course I like a color story that is a little more curated, but I have to say the formulas in here are really nice. I have tried every single color in this palette on my eyes, and I don't think there's a bad shade in here. They're very nice. You have a mix of mattes and shimmery shades in here, just really, really, really pretty. Again, I do have videos with all the palettes I'm going to talk about today, and I actually have a code with Kylo. It's just a one-time use affiliate code, but you can use code Heather. And right now, well, I'm not sure if it's still on when this video goes up, but they are having a buy one get one free sale on their palettes. This one is very beautiful, like I said, but because I have to rank these based on preference, color story does play into it. So some of the palettes that I'm going to talk about later, I just like a bit more. Next up at the number 6 spot, I have the Pat McGrath Bridgerton Round 2 palette. Now this is where it gets even harder because I love this palette. Hear me when I say I love this palette. And you may be thinking, well, Heather, why is it coming down lower in the rankings? And that's just because this palette is only 6 shades. There's only 6 shades in here. So with the tones that are in here, I feel limited in the looks I can create. So when I'm comparing it with other color stories and other palettes, it's just coming in a little bit lower because I feel like I have some of these same tones in the first Bridgerton palette that I have from Pat McGrath. But the reason why I love it so much is because we do have some really beautiful special shades. I mean, this shade right down here with the bee in it, do you see how intensely sparkly that is? It's so beautiful. I love the Bridgerton show. I'm reading the Bridgerton books. Really, really love it. There's something very special about this palette. I mean, that is so reflective and intense, and I really like Pat McGrath's eyeshadow quality. I just couldn't rank it any higher because, like I said, we're limited here. I don't feel like these pinky tones are unique enough from Pat McGrath for it to rank any higher. And again, this is a higher price point. I do consider that when I'm kind of ranking and thinking about how much I love a palette. Price point does play into it, but I just have to reiterate, I love this palette. I have been using this palette. I've worn this palette to work. I always get comments from people telling me you can't wear colorful looks like that to work. You can't wear that in a professional environment. I've been working in a professional environment in my career with my science degree for 15 years now, and I wear color to work. This look right here, I would wear to work. This palette I have worn to work several times since getting it. I really love it. I really enjoy it, but because it is a little bit more limited in terms of looks you can create, it's ranking a little lower. Okay, next up is the Nomad Paradise palette. Is it Paradise Islands palette? Sorry. I really like this palette. I really like Nomad as a brand. They make some of my palettes that are my favorites. This one for me is ranking a little bit lower just because of the color story. I love this color story. It's very bright. It's very colorful. But if you know me, you know I usually like looks that can go really dark. And with this palette, it is very light and bright. It's very mid-tone with some light shades, but I love it for what it is. I do enjoy pulling like a black shadow in, something like that to mix it up and pull this palette a little bit darker. But I'm wearing these shades today. Let's see. I'm wearing this shade right here, Manna. I'm wearing Seashell. I'm wearing Bora Bora. I think those are the only 3 shades from this palette that I'm wearing today. I think this is beautiful. I really like this super sparkly reflective formula from Nomad. I think that one is so, so beautiful. We also have really pretty matte shades that are smooth and kind of creamy to the touch in this palette. I love that we have these duochrome shades, really, really shifty, special shades. I love the packaging. I love the theming. If you are looking for a bright palette, like some bright colorful shades to add to your collection, definitely check this one out. I really have been enjoying this one. Okay, and we're now into the top 4, and at number 4 I ranked the new Melt Gemini 2 palette. Now, Melt is a brand that I love. Basically, anytime they release something, I'm gonna buy it, I'm going to test it out. And I love this palette. I love the tones in here. I think it's so, so beautiful. I love these pinky tones. I know pinky mauve shades have been really on trend right now when it comes to makeup, and these are absolutely beautiful. This is a very matte heavy palette, which I think can be fun, especially if you want to pull in your shimmery shades. This palette is really pretty mixed with the Pat McGrath, because the Pat McGrath does have those really intense shimmers, but it doesn't have a lot of range as far as the mattes go. So mixing this palette with this one from Pat McGrath can be super fun. But you do have 2 kind of metallic-y shades, really, really pretty grungy deep tones. This is the great Melt formula that I know and love. I like that with these pinky tones, we have these grungy greens. I think that adds kind of some versatility to the palette, so you can kind of mix and match these tones. You don't just have to get a monochromatic pink look. I love the Gemini palette, the original. I have loved that for years. It's one of my favorite palettes ever, so I was really happy that Gemini got a twin sister. Okay, next up we have another of my favorite brands. This is the Nude Prism palette from Lunar Beauty. I said earlier that we were going to talk about another neutral palette, but one that I just think is amazing. First of all, packaging. Packaging kills it. This is beautiful. And then we have a beautiful color story inside. I really like the formula that Lunar Beauty is doing. This, to me, is very buildable, but not sheer. So when you first go in with these shadows, you do get really, really nice, beautiful pigment, but you can also dip your brush in again and build the neutrals up to be even more intense. That's very important to me in neutral palettes. I want to be able to get intensity, and I like that this palette goes from very light to very dark. So we have those kind of pinky rosy tones. We also have the warm tones down here. We have this one row right here that is these intense wet type of metallic shades that I just really, really enjoy. This is another palette that I have been reaching for a lot, and I've been dipping into it just for this black shade to add depth to looks. This is a beautiful black shadow. I just like that we have deep tones and we have light tones. I think this also is a palette that beginners will really like because you have a lot of range of neutrals. But if you're somebody like me who loves to play with makeup, I think you'll really love this palette because of how you can kind of build these shades, these really special metallic shimmery shades, and the depth and the range of tones that we have. This is one of my favorite neutral palettes. I have loved this collection. Sorry, I've kind of got the mirror like right on the light for y'all, but it's so, so, so beautiful. If you are looking for tones like this, if you're looking for a good neutral palette, I would definitely recommend this one. I do have a code with Lunar Beauty. My affiliate code is Heather if you want to save on this palette. Okay, next up is this Sigma palette. This is my number 2 palette that I've been trying recently. I love this. First of all, I love this kind of velvet quilted packaging. I think that's so beautiful. And what I think sets this palette apart in tone, for the mauvey, pinky palettes we've been seeing is the depth, not just in the matte shades, because we do have a really light matte. We have a very deep matte, but we also have a very deep shimmer metallic shade. Like, look how deep and dark that purple is. We have deep like color and we have deep neutral. So to me, that kind of sets this palette apart. And in the same way that I love it for how dark it goes, we have a light matte, and let me see a finger that doesn't have shadow on it. We have a light neutral. So we're getting a light neutral. Yes, a light neutral, a light matte. Then we kind of have this nice range here. I really like how we have a mix of mattes here and shimmers here. You also get a brush with this palette, which of course, again, I take into consideration like price point. So the fact that you're getting these beautiful shadows and you're getting a dual-ended Sigma brush, I really like that. This shade right here, Avant Garde, is like a shifty purple to blue shade that I think can really take this palette like to another level. You can create a beautiful pinky look and you can add this kind of pop of purple blue that's really unexpected. I just really enjoy it. I like the quality of Sigma shadows. I've been reaching for this one a lot. I think it's so beautiful. I also have a code with Sigma. I try to say my codes so I just let y'all know everything's in the description box, but if you use code HeatherAustin10, I believe, at Sigma, you can save, but Sigma always runs a lot of good sales. I will have everything linked down below. Again, I love the packaging and I love the quality of the shadows inside. Okay, my number one palette may not be a surprise to you. That is the Dragon Fruit palette that is a collab between Jaclyn Cosmetics and Emily Violet Marie. This is an all multi-chrome, duochrome, sparkly, and like satin. I forget what they call the formula, but there's no mattes in here. It's all beautiful. It's all special. I love it. I have bought so many single shadows from Cleona, so I was so excited when they announced they were going to be doing a palette, and it's a collab palette. So once again, congratulations to Emily Violet Marie. You absolutely killed it with this one. I am wearing this shade right here, Fruit Fizz. That is the orange you see. I've got this shade Prickly on my outer corner. I'm wearing both of those shades here. I mean, the whole collection was beautiful, but come on, like, look at this palette. Look at these bright greens. I love this palette. This is so beautiful. I have loved Cleona for so long, and to see them do such a cool palette. I mean, look at this mirror, this packaging. Like, this is just a home run palette. I think it is beyond amazing. I love the shades. I love how bright it is. I think it's perfect for summer. I do have a video up with looks with this palette, swatches. Definitely check that out. All right, y'all, thanks so much for watching. I would love to know, of all the palettes that you have been using recently, what's your number one favorite palette? Let me know, even if it's nothing new. Even if you are shopping your stash, using what you have, let me know. Is there a single shadow you're reaching for? Is there a palette you're reaching for? I want to hear from y'all. What was your number one favorite palette that you've been wearing recently? Let me know down in the comments. Again, if you wanted to get my Heather Austin and Adept Cosmetics palette, it is restocking Friday, May 6th. I will put all the details down below. You can tell this one's well loved. I will have another look with that palette coming to y'all for the restock. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!